there's a lot in that sentence, obviously. Even that last part, overall. We tend to look at life as an overall thing. Like when you get to the end of your life, you look back and say, that was a life well lived. I don't know, man. You ever stop and think about how much you do? What I mean by that is, anybody here play like online games? Any chance? Okay. So this might make some sense. What's that?
Roblox counts, right?
I have no idea.
Roblox counts. Yeah, okay, Roblox counts.
Is that a video game?
Yeah,
I have a girl. So.
I don't play it, but
your cereal today is.
I got a Roblox girlfriend.
Terrible thing to say. I'm going to repeat that same joke next period.
Please do.
I used to play a game, Fallout, if you guys know what Fallout is.
Yeah. Love the game.
If you ever play the game and you get to the very end of it, and you might think like, wow, that went by really quickly. And you might think of it like, oh, it took me 2 months or so to get here, or whatever. Now, I don't know if you ever do this, but you get towards the end of the game, or you get to the end of the game, and you look back on the things that you did when you first started the game, like all the grinding you did, all the little things, places you visited, the interactions you had, the actions that you took, and you can start to realize, wow, I did a lot of stuff within this game in the past 2 months. It's quite incredible, really. If you ever think back to maybe like a friend you've been friends for a number of years, and you think back to all of the things that you did together, it's a lot. Even if it's just like walking from here to your next period, even if it's just having lunch together, even if it's text messages, even if it's going to the fair, the July 4th fair at Kimball Park together, you're going to realize you have done, excuse me, excuse me, you have done a lot of stuff together. And then you think about like the big things that you've done together. Like maybe, I don't know, maybe, yeah.
Actually, no.
Maybe you might think of like the 4th of July fair as like a big thing. You might say, okay, fine. Maybe you'll think of going to prom together as a big thing. But your life isn't made up of just these peaks. You can also think about the hard things that you guys went through together. The loss of something. I don't know, car accident, you might say, whatever. Whatever those things are, those little valleys. But most of your life is not going from high point to low point to high point again. Most of your life is lived in this in-between area, right here. That's the eating lunch together. That's the sending text messages. That's the walking to classes together. That's the whatever it is, fill in the blank. It doesn't even have to be the daily things, but when you leave here, maybe you'll stay in touch with some people, and it'll be the every few days when you talk or go somewhere or whatever. And so if you're looking for those dopamine hits, they happen down here, by the way, just as much as they happen up here. It's still like this emotional jumping around that we do.
Oh, just like when you laugh at noise.
What's that?
It's like when you laugh at noise, you feel it as well.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes, I mean, it blows me away sometimes when I have, like, I'll talk with former students, and they'll tell me, my favorite point, my favorite moment in your class was, and I'll usually say, no, I don't read minds. And then they'll say, oh, and they'll tell me something that I said or something that I did that just, now a lot of times I sit there and go, I said that? I go, huh. Like, one of my former students was telling me like a year ago or so, he said, my favorite point was, he said, my favorite memory was, one time somebody answered their phone in your class and you just absolutely went off on them by answering your phone. And you got to be an absolute moron to answer a phone in a classroom. I don't know what teacher allows this to happen. Or who the hell you think you would choose to make those rules yourself. But anyway, so the person answered the phone and I went off on them apparently. And the girl said, it's my mom. Like somehow that's supposed to change how I feel about this. And I told her, I don't care if it's Jesus Christ calling you right now. You hang up that. I stopped, I guess, and said, actually, no, if it's Jesus, give it to me. I got some questions.
Oh.
I have no recollection of this ever happening, but it sounds exactly like something I would say. And a lot of times I hear those things from former students. I go, yeah, that sounds like something I would say, or it's accurate to a point. I've been in the administrative offices before over things I've said before, and I usually say, I don't recall saying exactly that, but that's very much in the vein of the way that I do talk, so it sounds like something I would say, yes. That's all of this right here. Now you can imagine how extreme it has to be such that I would remember something that was such a big deal. But a lot of times in life, what happens is that other people are motioning through life kind of like this, while you are. In other words, there are moments in their lives that are like the peaks of some kind of experience or interaction with you, and to you it was Tuesday. It was part of the mundane. And so how is it that you can kind of, when you have like a really great friend maybe, or a really great experience, perhaps it looks kind of like, this, where you guys will peak in certain things together as you move through life. Perhaps that's what it looks like. Maybe that's what we might call like synchronicity. And you've got these, when people are, it's different from the Jungian way of using that word, but it's coming together at these peaks and moments and being able to look at yourselves and go, this is going to be a great memory of our lives. If you can remember it in real time, when it actually happens, that gives you the opportunity to enjoy that. And so I think that, kind of going back to what Frank was saying, that if we can find a way to be ever present, and I mean that, ever present in every moment, so that when something interesting happens, we can take note of it. Because I promise you, you all have fascinating things that happen to you in your lives. It might just escape your notice because it's not one of these things up here. And even when you really get down to it, man, if you live to be 80 years old, you're going to have 80 of these 4th of Julys. You're not going to have 80 proms, but you're going to have proms, you're going to have weddings, you're going to have funerals, you're going to have a lot of things in your life. And if we're always waiting for those huge things to enjoy our lives, like if I asked you what are the things that make your life worth living, I wonder how many of you would say, oh, it was a trip to Paris. It might have been a wonderful thing, but how many of those have you had? Maybe you're going to say, oh, it was like a birth of a child. Okay, maybe, but how many of those are you going to have? Once or twice in your life, once or twice, 3 times in your life, and it probably is less important as it goes. And I mean that the child itself is important, but it's not your first one anymore. And so if we're living life from peak to peak, I think that we're going to find that our lives are going to be less fulfilling than if we find peaks within this gray area right here. In other words, if you can sit there when you're having coffee with a friend of yours and say, it's funny that we're laughing about, I don't know, the Kardashians or something, I don't know, oh, whatever the hell. And people will say, like, we don't talk about, bullshit, I hear it when I go to Starbucks. In other words, if you can sit there at every moment and say, this is an important moment, this is a fun one, this is or not even just like this is a life-changing moment, but just, this is one of those moments that makes life worthwhile. That means you don't have to remember in retrospect and look at the pictures of your life. And hopefully you won't begin most of your sentences when you're talking about happy times. You won't begin with what I find to be the most, I guess, demoralizing or discouraging opening to any sentence. Remember when? Remember when we went to Paris? Remember when we had that 4th of July? Remember when we went to prom? Because that's always remembering back to the good times. If you're sitting with somebody and you're talking about this event, I'm not saying there's a harm in talking about it. What I'm saying is that there's a harm in missing the fact that you both are sitting there right now talking about it. And that's something that could be meaningful. It could be worthwhile. We oftentimes forfeit the present for the future and the past. Someday, remember when, versus where are we right now? And where you are right now, as I've said, is the only thing that's real in your life anyway. What's going to happen in the future, you don't know that that's going to happen. It's in your imagination. What's happened in the past isn't real. It's in your memory. It happened, but it's not happening. It's not in the present. And let's face it, the way that you remember it is probably off a little bit anyway, because our memories tend to do that. So instead, what really is meaningful is the right now. The right now. That's why whatever you find yourself doing at this moment really genuinely is the most important thing in your life. And you might think, like, sitting in this English class is the most important thing in my life? Right now it is, yeah. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. Well, what if my mind is elsewhere? Then you're divided, my friend. And there's a problem with you. I don't mean a problem like there's something, I'm not saying there's something deficient in you. I'm saying that now your mind and your body are separated, and that means you're cut in half. When you can bring your mind and your body together in one place at one time, well, then you're there. All of you is there, wholly, completely. And that means that every aspect of you can enjoy whatever it is that you're doing. That doesn't mean we can't look forward to the future, but just understand it's your imagination. That doesn't mean we can't admire the past, or like the past, or have some fond memories of it, but just understand it is that. It's your past. But it's that present thing, man. And so many of us struggle to live in the present. You know, I'm thinking back to as soon as I say that, I can think of half a dozen or a dozen friends of mine who have lost very meaningful relationships in their lives because they were going by checkpoints. Well, we've been dating for a year now, so that means that we should start thinking about moving in together. Because as soon as we move in together, then that starts the clock on 2 years from then, we're supposed to be married. And once you get married, then of course that starts the clock on a year or two down the road of having their first child. And then once you get there, and then once you get there, and as soon as you don't hit those checkpoints, then they've sat back and said, I feel like we're not going anywhere. I feel like our relationship isn't going anywhere.
Bruh.
Yeah, where does it have to go if it is somewhere? You know, there's this. I've never watched Star Trek before. My dad was a big fan of Star Trek, but I remember walking through the room one time and seeing this episode where they came across a civilization that they thought was primitive because they didn't have warp drive. Warp drive allows them to travel the stars. And they come across a civilization that doesn't have warp drive, so they assume that they're very primitive, but then they go and they see their cities, and they see their technology, and they're like, oh my God, you guys are incredibly advanced. And they said, yeah. And they're like, how come you don't have warp drive? And they kind of are quizzical, and they go, well, where would warp drive take us except away from home? The idea is they never developed it because they didn't want to leave. They liked where they were. If you're so focused on the future, it suggests that you're not content in the present. And if you're not content, and if your future hopes are making it so that you cannot be content in the present, there might be something wrong with how you're viewing your life and your progress there. You know, we're always living for this future promise such that we forget our present, actually the thing that we actually have in the hand right now. You know, if you're together, if that's the really important thing, like what's the whole point of moving in together? Because we want to be together. We're together. But we want to be together in the same space. Okay? And if both of you want that right now, then I guess that's a good time to do it. But if there are things that are kind of not gelling quite right, then you bring them together. You know, it's going to happen, especially if you keep enjoying the present. And in fact, if you keep enjoying the present, it's going to happen way faster than if you introduce discontent into it. You know, and that's true about again. That's true about just about everything. Some people are. I know some of y'all are just can't wait to get out of here in a few months. You know? And I understand why. I mean, I completely understand why. But just know that you're missing something because you have to be here anyway. So you might as well get something out of it. You know, and you will be out of here. You will. You will. Don't be in such a rush for the inevitable.
Absolutely. Don't
be in such a rush for the inevitable. The inevitable is going to happen. It will. And whether or not you have great memories in the past is how much you're able to enjoy that present right now and not be in such a rush for the inevitable. There's always something to enjoy. And if not, maybe change some things about the ways in which you're living. Maybe live in a way that you actually do join those kinds of memories and hopes and dreams into the present. You know? Hopes and dreams give us something to look forward to. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Memories have a way of having us look past. But don't get so caught up in the past. Maybe here's your homework assignment. When you go home today, go into your house, close your eyes, and actually no, don't close your eyes, sorry, forget that. Oh, I guess, yeah, maybe that. Close your eyes. And just imagine and run through your house as fast as possible, but don't run into anything. Or run as fast as possible.
What if I spin?
Does that count?
Spin, I don't care, as long as you're moving forward, right? And as long as you're imagining where you're going to be when you stop running. Forgetting about the present is a lot like that. You know? Same thing now. When you wake up from your coma, after running headfirst into a wall, and you get back from the hospital, now, next homework assignment, if you remember this, look back and run as fast as you can through your house. And don't run into anything. Both of those are probably going to lead to concussions or missing teeth. So, I don't know. Enjoy the present. I guess that's what Pirsig would tell you. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Bam, bam, bam.
I just, what that makes me think is like, we should just take a step back, slow everything down, just like live the moment that we're doing, or just like stop thinking and just do what you do right at the moment. Because I do that a lot. I like start thinking, okay, I'm gonna do this, do that, do this. Oh, but I forgot to do this, and I just don't do it because I'm like in such a hurry to like do another thing that I forget about those stuff. So sometimes I do take a step back, slow it down, do one thing at a time, and I sometimes do accomplish what I need to, but most of the times I fail. And then I think about it and I'm like, oh, shouldn't have done that. I fucked up. That's how I think about it.
Or maybe you learn some things. Anybody in here surf? I started surfing again. I haven't surfed since high school. I completely forgot everything from back then. I started surfing recently. In the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I have learned a lot of ways you're not supposed to surf.
Eat shit.
Oh yeah, I've eaten a lot of shit. And I bought the board a few weeks ago, and I bought a short board, it's 6 feet. The general rule is that, so it's about, it's a 6 foot board, so about there. And the general rule is the longer the board, the easier it is.
Yeah.
So you ride like an 8 foot board, I could probably take you out in the water and you could probably start surfing on the first day with an 8 foot board. They're like, so you get something in between like a 7 foot board, I guess, maybe there. And you can kind of, you'll get some skills, but you'll also, fall down a lot. So I went and bought one, and the guy told me, he says, you're fit, you're athletic, you look like you'll figure it out. He says you're going to eat a lot of shit for a few weeks. But at the end of it, a shorter board's also faster, it's more maneuverable, so it's more fun. So with a long board, pretty much all you can do is go straight. With a shorter board, you can start to cut into waves and all that. So I said, cool. And so he's right, I've eaten a lot of shit in the past few weeks. And then I learned a lot of ways that you're not supposed to surf. And then I was out there yesterday, and I was just like, I'm not leaving until I can, and I mean, I can stand up, but until I can stand up consistently, like, nearly every time. And so that finally happened yesterday at night out in the Hoya, because I was out there for over 3 hours, because I'm like, I'm not leaving until this happens correctly. And I thought about it, and I'm like, what's so funny is that now, next time I go out, because this is what happens with skill sets, it's going to dip again, and I'm going to eat some more shit. And then eventually, I'll be fine, and eventually you'll start to eat out, you're fine with it.
Yeah.
But you've got to be willing to eat shit in life. Maybe that's what I'll tell this video. The need to eat shit in life.
That's important.
It is, because it also reminds you that life is like a shit sandwich, right? The more bread you've got, the less shit you've got to taste.
Yeah. For me though, from this entire thing, I got like three things. I got 3 things out of it. From when you mentioned the peaks where it's like, oh, that's like the greatest thing in your life, and then there's lows and highs a lot. For some cases, like, when you mentioned you rush through life, you never really thought of it as a really important thing in life. Like, you can have like a friend, for example, that says, oh, this one time we hang out together, that we chilled and played together, bro, that was like the most memorable thing in my life. For me, my perspective, I'm just like, yeah, like right there, yeah. For me, I'm just like, wait, well, I did appreciate it, but I didn't really find that as high. I was like, hi. But I'm glad you enjoyed it, mostly. Like, it makes you think like, huh, I just thought that was a regular hangout a lot, mostly. And I'm glad I do this to a lot of people. Like, I do this unintentionally, and I always think of it as, like, not an important thing. I think of it as, like, a little thing I do, but I never really thought how much could it affect the person differently, depending on, like, like depending on on the person, like how they feel about you, like as like a person.
But this is not a good thing.
Yeah.
What I'm about to say is not a good thing. Don't take this as a. It can be kind of funny, but it's funny in the fact that it's very sad.
Yeah.
You're saying, yeah, you don't even know what I'm about to say. Unless are you reading my mind again?
Anyway, yeah. Oh, I hate that.
Don't take this to be a good thing. But that's kind of like one of these things here.
Like,
That it isn't even necessarily, by the way, the peak also, that goes in the inverted direction as well. That can also be that their low point to you is just Wednesday. Yeah, so it'll cut in both directions as well. This is the really sad one though. Like when someone undergoes some level of tragedy or something bad, and to you it was just Wednesday. Yeah, go ahead, continue.
Yeah, for the second one though, when you mentioned like your body and mind are separated, that was like I had that type of experience when I was like was last year. My English teacher, she talked about how one of the things that got me was where she told me, oh, for whatever goal you want to achieve, just at least work hard, try hard, like try your best, whatever you want to do in life, then eventually you'll achieve it later on. I told her my plan later on, like saying, I'm not going to college. She questioned me why, and then afterwards she basically went off on that, telling me, it's like, you need college to do this, to get better opportunities in your life. Like, why would you want to do that? I already found ways to, different opportunities, like, ways to achieve this later on. So I don't think college is not really going to help. College is not really going to help me. Besides giving me student loans, I appreciate it, but no. Like, that threw me off so much to the point I was like, wait, so we were not in the same wavelength? So I had a completely different mindset while I was just there listening to the lecture, and I had so much different ideas, and that threw me off so hard, questioning like, what do I want to do? What do I want to do?
There's only 3 reasons you should go to college, and I don't know that that's one of them.
Yeah.
Lawrence.
Oh, but I was going to mention if you're very slow, like when you have 10 minutes to yeah, so like there's this one time where he was in Hawaii and they got an alarm of a ballistic missile was about to hit.
Oh yeah, I remember that was just a few years ago.
Yeah, and he got a alert that he only had 10 minutes, that there was 10 minutes and they had to go to like a shelter. But instead of doing that, he called his daughter, but his daughter wasn't answering. So instead he decided to go to the beach and just recall everything all the good things that happened to him. And basically he was just accepting that he was going to die soon.
Yeah. God. If you're ever having too good of a day,
Yeah.
go on YouTube and you can search up phone calls that were made from the hijacked airplanes on 9/11. And people, when they, especially on flight United 93, which they knew was going to be crashed, because the other 2 planes had already hit the towers. They'd gotten word that it was going to happen, so they knew they were going to try to overtake the plane, but they knew that there was a very low chance of success. And so people made their phone calls home, and obviously not everybody answers, and so we have a lot of recordings from people's answering machines and their voicemails, and that's all they have left of their loved one, of these messages. And it's so interesting to see what people say in their last moments. I used to have a job where I was with people oftentimes in their last moments, and one thing I never heard was, I wish I spent more time in the office. And there's a value to spending time in the office. This isn't a way of saying you shouldn't work, because when you work, it's a great thing when you work, and you provide and you develop responsibility. Work is a very good thing. But unfortunately, we have this idea that work is a bad thing in our society. I think that you're going to see that there's this correlation between our belief that work is a bad thing and having high levels of anxiety and stress in our lives. When you work, you overcome things and you prove to yourself that you can, and that helps you to lower your levels of anxiety and stress. So I'll leave it at that. But yeah, it would be an interesting experiment. What if you had 10 minutes to live? What would you do?
Oh.
I told you guys I died one time before. Yeah, I had some time to reflect on that. So.
I'm still not gonna get over the fact that some poor dude got told that he was gonna be okay, and then like some weeks later, like, hey, my boy.
Yeah. Remember how we said you had? Remember?
Yeah, you had cancer.
You guys have 5.5 months now. Well, he did back then.
Yeah. That's still in my head, bro. I'm just like.
You know what blows me away is I told that story in a class one time, and then a student raised her hand and said the same thing happened to her uncle. Yeah. It's happened. I've had a few students actually who said that that's happened to family members. So I'm like, okay, good.
Damn,
So
these
it's not
fucking
just
doctors,
me.
man.
Yeah, you know what the number one cause of death, besides, I think, outside, I shouldn't say number one then, I think it's the number 3 cause of death, I think I read it was? Malpractice.
Huh?
Doctors making mistakes.
Oh.
It happens.
Yeah.
But, I mean, when you expect perfection, man, you know, but what doctors do is, you know, it is a net benefit. You know, it is a net benefit. But lots of people die.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's
Imagine getting told that all you have to do is drink water.
Yeah.
Cure cancer.
Yeah, that guy, I don't know what he would have been drinking if he knew he had only 6 months to live.
Yeah, drinks on me. Yeah. Damn, yeah.
We only got past that first sentence, I guess.
And then the results, anyways.
It's that last part that we stayed away from. Wondering later, we're all the time like, and sorry that it's all gone. It's so sad.
I mean, I can lead up. I mean,
No,
I can say something about that.
we'll kill it, Dad, that's what to do, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I could say something about that at least.
Ignore
Because,
what I
like,
just said. Go ahead.
well, yeah, pretty much.